What are you doing? Let me show you how it's done. Dude, whatever. Nobody wears jeans with jean jacket. For years, this was all I knew, the pentatonic scale and how to improvise. I mean, if the chord changed, I just move the scale and play the exact same riffs. And, you know, you can't really get that far that way. And so finally, I learned, there are 5 boxes. I learned them all. And, you know, it still kind of sounded the same. But then, light bulb, one day, I realized how they overlap. You can really save yourself some time and some effort and some movement by learning how these different scales and shapes overlap, so that when the chords change, you don't have to move that much. And really, that's a pro guitar tip, to minimize your movement. Because if you do less work, you can get more results. That gives you more freedom, more expression, and you're not looking to find the right place. You know where you are constantly. That's the key. So let's take a look at how box 1 of the A minor pentatonic looks when you view it alongside box 4 of the D minor and box 3 of the E minor. They are so close. So just learn the differences and you can jam along with yourself. You don't even need a backing track, and you can play pretty much any key and really build your improv vocabulary and know your way around the fretboard. So remember, this works with minor chords and 7th chords. So you can just get a little jam going, and just on 2 beats, the first 2 beats of the measure, that's, you set your chord. And remember, when you're improvising, when you're soloing, you want to imply the chords with what you're playing. So what you can really do, if you're jamming along with yourself, you don't even need a looper, you don't even need a jam track. Just play that chord and get a little groove going, and count to 2, and then on 3 and 4 you're jamming with the scale. And then when you change chords, you can see how they overlap, and it becomes easier to play that way. Another way to minimize your movement on guitar is to learn your triads. We spend a lot of time learning the full chords with like all 6 strings, or 5 strings, or even 4 strings, but you don't need quite that many to really get that chord across. You know, your major and minor chords, they're just 3 notes. So that's called a triad, and you got, with just 3 basic shapes, you get what are called inversions. So that just means how you stack the notes, the lowest note to the highest note. The root position is going to have the root on the bottom. That's the name of your chord. So A would be right here. And going up, it's the 1, the 3, and the 5 of that scale. So A, C sharp, and E, and in that order. And you don't have the extra notes in there. If you play the full A, you're repeating several times, but to make the chord, you just need the triad. And that's a pretty familiar shape. It's like your E shape there, or an F, but you're just doing the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th string, and that's called the root position. Now, to get the first inversion, that means you change how they're stacked. Same 3 notes, you just change how they're stacked. We're going to move it up here, and that's C sharp, E, and A. So you go from A, C sharp, E to C sharp, E, A. So you change the order a little bit. It's a different inversion of the chord. second inversion is up here, and that looks like your A shape. And you can do that with one finger, you can do it with 3 fingers, however you make that chord. But that's a different inversion. You're changing the order again, so it's E, A, C sharp. So you got root, first inversion, second inversion. And you can use these when you're soloing. You can do arpeggios where you're just kind of strumming slowly playing the notes of the chord there. You can get a cool rhythm going with that, and it doesn't muddy up your sound. It just use those 3 notes, and it kind of sounds like you're playing a different chord. So it really mixes things up, especially if somebody else is playing. If you do different inversions, if you're hanging out on A for a long time, it can really mix things up, and you're doing different stuff, but now here's where the minimize movement part comes in. So if you look at how these chords overlap, here's something that you get. So if you were playing a chord progression in A, you have your A chord, you have your A chord, your D chord, your E chord. And there's a little bit of movement there, especially if you're doing this. You're doing A, you're doing D, you're doing E, or this one, this one, this one. You can see there's a lot of movement there, but you can get, if you use the triads, you can get them really close together. Here's your A, and then look, that's a D. And I didn't move very much at all. And then E's right here. See how much easier that is than going or even it's really cool if you're just soloing and you need to use those notes in something. You can really invent some parts that way. The same thing works with minor. The shapes look a little different. So here's your first inversion. So it looks a lot like the majors here. There's minor. And a familiar shape there. So root position, first inversion, second inversion. Looks a lot like the regular A minor that you know. So those triads can really help you out. Let's talk about another way to minimize movement. When you've got your scales, it can be really overwhelming to just look at all the boxes or to look at the entire scale all at one time. And so one thing you can do is to look for patterns, and you can really get some speed with some patterns that repeat, especially things that are like 2 frets apart. So your C major scale or your A minor scale, they're the same thing. If you look at it, you can identify some places where they're only 2 frets apart, and you can just use that as your map, and you're repeating the same movement, and you're just moving it around. So instead of having to think through the whole scale pattern, your fingers are just doing the same movement. So something like this. See, those are all only 2 frets apart. So it's the same shape all across the fretboard, and you can really get some cool licks there. So hey, I hope this has helped you minimize movement to make more of your practice time, to make more of your licks and your soloing. And if you like what you see here, leave me a comment, subscribe, and I'll be glad to answer any questions, or you can let me know an idea for a future video. Thanks for watching, and keep playing.